All right. Welcome, everyone, to another fabulous episode of Altitude. Fantastic show today. I am delighted to welcome to the show Zach Hughes, who is VP of IT at CHS. For those that might be curious, CHS is one of the industry's leading agriculture businesses, but kind of uniquely, they are cooperative, owned by the ranchers and farmers and other cooperative structures across America, which I think is super cool. Zach, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Oh, my pleasure. Something else folks may or may not know is that Zach Hughes is one of the industry's leading experts on the principles and practices of leadership. And so it's a real treat to have him on the show today. And of course, today we are going to be talking about leadership in IT in the age of AI and machine learning, which I think is a super important topic and certainly something that's on the tip of everyone's brain. So really excited to get into that today.
Awesome. This is going to be fun.
Yeah, will be fun. So let's kick this off with some analogy. And that analogy is that clearly we are on the precipice of a paradigm shift, right? Now, there have been many paradigm shifts in our industry before, such as mainframe going to PC, metal compute going to virtual compute, private cloud going to public cloud. But now we are in something perhaps fundamentally different, which is human learning going to machine learning. So instead of kind of dwelling on the past and talking about leadership abilities and techniques through these previous, paradigm shifts, which I think is kind of a well-worn and well-known path, right? I'd like to drill into the challenges and opportunities leaders have to define themselves and their organizations with this coming paradigm shift from human learning to machine learning. So the first question to you, Zach, would be, what's different this time with this new paradigm shift that maybe is unique from the previous ones?
It's a good thought. I think when we look at this revolution, there's a lot of things that are a little bit different about it. But I'll also say, just as a technologist, as someone that's been leading the technology industry for a number of years, mentally, I think we all like to kind of anchor to other things as some of the things you just mentioned. I'll pick on one that kind of frames some of my thinking as I look forward through this next generation. And you mentioned a couple of different paradigm shifts that we've all gone through in the past. One that you didn't mention that I think it's just kind of fun to kind of talk about a little bit is many technologists listening to this podcast episode have heard about or maybe lived through the transition from like BlackBerry to iPhone. It's something that's long in our past, but we all used to walk around with BlackBerries, and BlackBerry was king of kind of corporate mobile communications for so many years. Had all the feature-rich security controls and all the mechanisms, and kind of corporate loved it. And then along came Android and iPhone that totally disrupted it. And initially, they weren't better than a BlackBerry from the standpoint of security, from the standpoint of even manageability, but it was better for the consumer, and it made the consumer more productive. That was enough. That was simply enough to disrupt everything. And of course, fast forward, many years, it took a while for like the management ecosystems and third-party products to kind of fill in the gaps and make, Android and iPhones as manageable as BlackBerries were, and now even further than that. But we're in that gap for quite a long time. And those that kind of, clung to their BlackBerries, ripped this out of my cold dead hands. That didn't turn out too well for those technology leaders. So I take that as a little bit of a harbinger, when it comes to the AI revolution that's going on here. And you mentioned, machine learning in general, the machines learning instead of the humans doing the learning. We've been on that path for a little while, especially when it comes to like IT, kind of controlled and governed machine learning. So, it's kind of like grew out of like almost an extension of our practices around, data warehousing, analytics, and just in general, what we've had teams that have built dashboards and reports and done things on behalf of the business, right? So it was like, well, we need to do AI. I was like, well, we kind of layered that on top of that existing foundation. Maybe hired some new data engineers, bought some new toolkits, and kind of started running machine learning algorithms on top of our existing data sets to better our predictive capabilities on behalf of the business. And some business folks have also then hired data scientists onto their teams, so they get that insight directly, and even outside of IT. So it's kind of pervasive and gone out that way. So all that's been kind of this organic growth of AI and machine learning inside of enterprises. So the recent shift, why that's so different than that is it kind of goes back to my earlier analogy. It's like the consumerization of AI is I think the thing that's a bit new. Whereas anyone can access ChatGPT or Bard or any of these other services, not call IT, not tell us even, and just start putting these tools to work for their productivity. So that's kind of why I brought up that earlier example of the iPhone, because while it's ubiquitous today, when it first came in, it was a bit of a threat because we couldn't control it. And I think AI is now at this place where it's been kind of contained for a while. It's been in the realm of IT or IT adjacent things. And now just in the year 2023, it's gone straight to consumer. So that's the new thing. And of course, the implications of all of that and the power of all of that are things we can talk about as well. But that's a little bit of how I think about some of the challenges going forward here.
No, it's an interesting analogy, and it's a good point insofar as, of course, Steve Jobs, I think, really understood that the market he was going for to be differentiated and to make an impact with the iPhone was the consumer market. He knew that if he hit the consumer market, he would probably have a much more profound impact on the industry as a whole than trying to, say, go head on with BlackBerry and just create some more kind of, Zen looking BlackBerry. So then moving now to AI, do you think that Microsoft leading with ChatGPT and the OpenAI and now Google with Bard are looking at that path that Jobs took with the iPhone and saying, this is a better way in, meaning that AI is first going to be vetted and institutionalized as a consumer tool and then become important to business makers and business leaders, after the fact?
I guess I probably don't know the answer to the question strategically in terms of how they're thinking about it, but this is what's playing out in front of us.
Yeah.
I think this is just really what's super interesting is now we have AI in the hands of our end users, and they're using it and taking advantage of it. And as we look at younger folks, I've got 2 teenage students. They're using these chatbots to kind of help them think and work through problems just in the same fashion that I would have used a Google search bar prompt many years ago to help me think through and solve problems. But they're getting much more kind of rich answers to their questions through these chatbots. So it's that's where things are kind of going. Let me make a couple of analogies. I think both Google and Microsoft, because those are 2 dominant players right now. In one sense, I look at the consumer targeted AI from Google as being kind of the next iteration of that Google search box. Why do you type something into Google? Is because you're looking for answers. So I see that being part of how that goes. Now let's pick the Microsoft piece apart. This is going to sound crude at first, but kind of roll with me, with this. It's like in a way, a chatbot or AI is like a better spell checker. So Microsoft Word, when word processing first came out, there weren't spell checkers, and then there became spell checkers. And then, this thing came out called grammar check, which is kind of gave you an extra edge on that. Since then, tools like Grammarly that plug into Word, can kind of even give you even more editorial mastery over your word processing. All this is in the name of not necessarily replacing jobs, but making the job you're doing faster. Making you more productive as an end user. I think Microsoft being this productivity powerhouse. You could say what is Microsoft known for? Maybe Apple's known for the consumer design. I'd say Microsoft over the years, they've done lots of things, but what are they known for? What's their key force in the market? It's productivity and user productivity. That's their deal. So I see, AI as a productivity enhancer, being something that makes a ton of sense for Microsoft to continue to invest in. The standalone chatbot interface that is ChatGPT through OpenAI, I see being built in as a new spell checker. It's a feature in everything you do. And Microsoft is doing things like with they call it Copilot, where some of those features are starting to show up in some of their products, and you'll see more and more of that. So I see, again, it's a bit of a crude analogy, but I'm without a computer, I'm not that good of a speller. You give me a pad and pencil, my spelling is average at best. You give me a computer,
mine's abysmal. It sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You give me a computer, and I'm the world's best speller. I look at these generative AI tools as just making us more productive content creators.
Yeah. It's clearly about productivity at this point. And really, the fundamental algorithms of machine learning that are centered around productivity kind of have their genesis in the spell checker, right? I mean, think about it. The spell checker, and even Clippy, God rest his soul, was really just a primitive form of machine learning at the time, right? It was a very basic model for being able to infer pattern recognition. I know, a million words based on the word that you've typed. This is probably the word that you're trying to type, and this is the best way to spell it. And there's even an interruptive capability, like good old Clippy, like, hey, it looks like you're trying to do something. Let me help you with that. So that could be terrifying because AI could be like super interruptive Clippy. And let's hope Microsoft gets that right. I think they will. If not, we're all in a world of hurt. So I agree with you there. But here's where things get really interesting. Unlike the very fundamental or basic machine learning, if you want to call it that was going on back in the 90s at that time. It really wasn't machine learning. It was probably just some kind of primitive basis for it. AI is going to offer some next level capabilities, right? So it can infer based on the way a spell checker works. It can extrapolate, it can anticipate, and it can even imagine. Now, what AI hasn't done yet, and may never do, is interrogate. And that's not asking a question, right? Interrogating means that behind that question, you have, as an individual, an ulterior motive or an opinion, right? Anyone that's been married for more than a minute knows this. So at some point, if AI learns to interrogate, that means that it's developing an opinion. Now, as a leader, is it more concerning to us that it develops an opinion, or more concerning that it does not? Insofar as an AI without an opinion could make a perfect worker. And maybe some of the things that humans contribute to companies are opinion-based. But if I have a workforce that no longer challenges me, I am potentially more productive.
Let's talk about this. This is the kind of steeps into the area of AI ethics a little bit.
Yeah.
Also, just share that this is also where a lot of the dynamite is. And I think we also have other bases of analogy here. Taking AI aside, let's just think, just over the last 10 years, I think we recognize the force of media, the force of social media, the biases in media and social media, the biases in content moderation, right? Those are all fairly controversial subjects that people have, kind of come on different sides of. But regardless, these are kind of active debates in our society in terms of the influence that they have over society. So, the thought is, okay, who's the human, programming the AI that you're interacting with, what, back to the interrogation point, what's their agenda?
Right.
And what's that end? And is that something that we're aligned with, or is in our best interest, or not? Do we have any say over that? Should that be totally neutral, or should that be something we can and should manipulate towards some objective or end? So those are things I'm concerned about. I will say another layer to watch out on that is maybe not as exploited today, but I could see us getting there really, really soon. Which is a bit of the marrying of kind of AI chatbots with kind of voice interfaces. So right now you're kind of typing into a prompt for the most part, a lot of these consumer-facing AI models. Let's just say what happens when that kind of gets ported into your Alexa or Siri or Cortana or whoever your digital assistant is. And right now, it's you say, Alexa, what's the weather? It tells you, well, it's gonna be 70 degrees and sunny today. End of conversation. Question, answer. what if in the future, Alexa says, it's like, well, it's going to be 70 degrees and sunny today. It's like, what you thinking about doing today? And then you answer, it's like, well, I was thinking about going to the park. It's like, oh, how are you going to get there? It's like, well, I was thinking about riding a bike. Hey, how's your bike doing? It's like, well, it's actually needs some repairs. And it's like, oh, you want to go to this bike shop or maybe look at new bikes and all these sort of things. So like you start getting engaged and you can see how the commercial advertising, opportunity potentially arises from that. Now, purely commercial, maybe that's above board and things like that. But you start layering in emotional intelligence. You start to anthropomorphize and personify AI in the human relationship to it. To me, I kind of get in this danger zone a little bit, where you already see the influence of social media and advertising and media in general on people, to kind of maybe think things they wouldn't otherwise think, do things they wouldn't otherwise do. Now you've got a super powerful computer that you're having conversations with that you could be subject to manipulation by. So it's just a concern of mine. It's actually I'm more comfortable typing into an AI chatbot. Start having a conversation with one, verbally. That's gonna be a mental hurdle for me because it just kind of sets off a whole bunch of kind of safety warnings for me personally.
Oh, well, if TikTok and Facebook or Snapchat, are any example, we have some challenging times ahead, not only for ourselves, but for our young ones, our children, right?
Yes.
Because AI is going to be even more profound from a social
Exactly.
media aspect, because to your point, it will be anthropomorphized. Now, let's go back to that iPhone analogy. What happened there, as you and I both well know, is that consumers, who are thus our workforce, our productive people, our teammates, our colleagues, even our friends, bring all of this expectation and experience into the workplace with them, right? I want that app on my phone for work because it helps me with my workflow, or it makes me more productive, or I need it for my lunch break. Or as an IT leader, how do we prepare ourselves for that with people bringing AI into the workplace in maybe not a condoned way? I mean, how do we stop AI from showing up in the workforce in a consumerized fashion?
To kind of take the lessons from the past. There's companies that blocked iPhones. We have iPhones. There's companies that blocked social media. Then all of a sudden, well, there's a bunch of commercial uses for social media, so I guess we have to allow that. I see, kind of a block first mentality as being a little bit of a weak position. Maybe you need to do that just for very, very short time so you can figure out what your policy or stance is. I think we've learned enough lessons to know that just simply doesn't work.
Right.
And as a tech leader, we can't put our heads in the stand here. So here I am sharing my perspective on AI with you. Every tech leader listening to this to this podcast, you're expected to have a perspective on this. You're expected to, because your business leaders, your customers, your colleagues, frankly, your family members at holidays are going to ask you, it's like, oh, what do you think about this? You're a tech leader. You should have a perspective. So even if you completely disagree with, the points we're making here, formulate your perspective on this. And I will say, keep an open mind, because the space is changing so radically. We continually need to kind of get new input and adjust our perspectives on these things as new information becomes available. So I'll give you kind of my perspective. This is as of, this date of recording in 2023, subject to change in the future, of course, as I think we shall hold loosely to our opinions on this. I look at it as a tool to be leveraged, within good controls. Everything you type into to that prompt becomes part of the new model. So kind of becomes available for public consumption kind of by default. So just know that you're not dealing with a private interface, generally speaking, unless you've contracted for that. So, don't put company secrets in the prompt is kind of idea number one.
Right.
And then number two, what comes back out of the prompt is your work product. It's almost like the spell checker example. Do I put an asterisk next to a blog article that I wrote that said, it's like, written by Zach Hughes, spell checked by Microsoft Word? No, it's my work product. So if I'm going to use AI to enhance my work product, whether it be the code I write or an email I write, it's still me hitting the send button on the email at the end of the day. and it's still be, checking into the code repo at the end of the day, and my name's on that code. While we can have AI assist us in these sort of things, you kind of make sure that this at the end of the day is your work product and you're putting your name behind it. So that's something that I encourage users who do take advantage of AI tools to keep in mind. So one's on the input side, the other's on the output side in terms of how you treat that. You can't. There's no valid excuse to say like, well, I don't know, AI wrote that. It's not my fault. It's like, well, no, that doesn't work. This is you're using AI to assist you, help you be more productive, but this is still your work product at the end of the day. So that's something I keep in mind.
I went to TechX, was it last week? It's a blur. Great conference. It was down in San Jose. Really cool mixed venue, mixed audience. I was there, of course, to represent my company, Aviatrix. We do, secure cloud networking, but there was a strong AI presence there as well. Because again, it was like a mix of skills and players and disciplines. So I ended up just hanging out, talking to a lot of AI people, both people that were interested in it from a consumer model and people that were selling solutions based on AI of every type and stripe. So it's like this explosion or renaissance of AI. Everyone wants to jump on that bandwagon and leverage AI for something. And some of the ideas were brilliant and made sense. And some of them, to be expected, were like, well, good luck with that. But one of the prevailing sentiments from all of the people I talked to at the conference, and I was there for almost 3 days, was the concern, kind of the quiet undertone that, there's going to be a lot of churn in the job market as jobs are redefined or even replaced due to AI. And you're saying, and maybe correctly, let's hope, that really that's not going to happen at the scale that people are talking about, because fundamentally it's just like hyper productivity. It's just going to help people become more productive as opposed to, say, totally take over their jobs. Is that true?
That's where I'm at today. Yeah. So again, accept humbly that I could be wrong on this. It is a rapidly evolving space, but that's my perspective at this point in time. Robots and computers are still really good at doing what robots and computers can do. Humans are still amazingly good at what humans can do. Let's talk about creativity for just a brief moment, because I think that's the whole thought. Is like, well, automation of the past and things like RPA as an example, really good at automating tasks that stink. This isn't life-giving stuff. It's kind of life-sucking stuff. So let's give it to the robot to do.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, that's always a no-brainer. I still honestly kind of feel like we're still a little bit in that space, even though it feels different. I listened to a symphony that was written by AI, performed by real live musicians. The input of this was a composer that died. He had a body of composed works, and he had started a symphony and then died having it left unfinished. And the machine learning algorithm was given all of the past symphonies as input, and just all symphonies in general as relative input for kind of rules of music and things of that sort. And then given the start of this new symphony, this unfinished symphony, as kind of the starter, and say, okay, finish it. The rules of music, the style of this composer, finish it. And it was awesome. And I listened to this, not necessarily a classical music critiquer professionally, so maybe I wouldn't know anyway, is basically what I'm saying. But to my untrained ears, it was a beautiful piece of classical music. Didn't sound in any way computer generated, let's put it that way. The question is, was this creative? And if it was, who was creative? At this point, I'm still definitively on the point where that original dead composer was creative.
Mm-hmm.
The musicians that were playing that for me, the human musicians that were playing this piece for me to listen to, were creative. They put themselves, into their instruments and actually played the music for me. They were creative. I will even say the programmers that designed the models, had an element of creativity to their computer science work. But I will say, I'll just hold back and say, I don't think the computer was creative. I think it followed instructions that it was given. So that's where I'm at today.
I'm going to agree with you 100% on that. I have a little skin in this game. I have a PhD in popular music studies. And at the time when I was getting my PhD, I was doing as my graduate gig teaching history of rock at UT Austin. So I had my master's, so I was a professor, or so they say. And I did that for 5 years. And we would always get into raging debates about electronic music. And that was, sampling, the reuse of other people's material to create new or novel things. And there was one camp that said it's all forgery, right? That the original artist should get all the credit for this and that there's really no creativity there. And then there was the other camp that I was in that said, no, it's a new art form and you're not paying attention. It's the choice and the nuance and the selection and the presentation of these samples that is the artistry. So to your point, this composition and using AI just means that our tools are getting far more sophisticated, but there's still a fundamental human element in that. Insofar as the AI was instructed to do this and given a learning model that was seeded with specific material for this outcome by humans. So that's the future I hope for AI.
Mm-hmm.
So my last question to you is about expected outcomes in the industry versus unexpected outcomes. So this is a great transition for us. So from an IT perspective, there's all the expected outcomes that AI is going to help us with. You mentioned some of them: writing better code, obviously helping people become more productive from just a workflow perspective. I mean, these are the things everyone's kind of taking for granted. What do you think might be some unexpected outcomes that leaders need to start thinking about?
Here's an unexpected outcome that maybe it's something we've been already kind of experiencing at times. You've heard of we've all talked about data-driven decision making for many years as being, frankly, an improvement on gut feel, intuition, relationships. We've always done it this way. Those other ways of making decisions, right? I think when you start to layer in potential for bias, potential for manipulation into AI, data-driven decision making. I've heard this new term, data-informed decision making, which I kind of like almost a little bit better. And you could even get to, maybe it's not necessarily about the data anymore, but AI-informed decision making. To know the capacity for us to be manipulated by things that look like facts but aren't, look black and white but are more gray. It's to continue to make sure we don't fall victim to the machines. I'll kind of end with a little bit of a callback to something that you probably are familiar with, because I think we're of a similar generation. I have to imagine you remember the movie War Games.
Of course. Well, see, we have similar beards, so we know exactly how old each other are. So
yes. So War Games, Matthew Broderick. If anyone listening to this podcast has not seen War Games, I don't care how old you are, go watch War Games. It's an amazing movie.
Yes.
The rough plot is, a computer is going to basically create thermonuclear war with between the United States and Russia, and have mutually assured destruction. That's the whole kind of climax of the movie. There's this point where this professor talks to this general and saying, you are listening to a machine. Do the world a favor and don't act like a machine. I will say that's maybe the last thing that I would kind of leave us with in this realm of uncertainty. Let's use the machines, but let's not as a result become machine-like ourselves. Let's retain our human intuition, relationships, skepticism, all these sorts of things that potentially act as a little bit of protection from us being manipulated into hopefully not starting World War III because of AI. So that's what I'm thinking.
Great closer, Zach. Love it. Awesome conversation. I know our listeners are going to love this episode. And again, thank you for coming on the show. This has been a real treat. Thank you for your time.
Thanks. Really, really glad you had me. It's been a fun conversation.
Yeah. Let's come back maybe next year. And then we could do a reassessment and be like, wow, we were right. Or we could be like, oh, no, we were wrong. It'll be fun. We'll do a touch point and we can see how accurate we were.
All right. Cool. Sounds awesome.
All right. Take care. Thanks.
All right. See ya. Bye-bye.
Bye.